Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Sean. Today I am ranking the 25 books I set out to read in 2025. So let's get into it. So for this video I'm ranking them from my least favorite to my most favorite read of 2025. And over here I'll be putting the projected star rating I had for each book, as well as my projected ranking I had for each book. So let's get into it, beginning with 1-star books. So these are books I hated, I rage quit, I wanted to throw them against the wall. And I do have to say, every ranking on this list is just my subjective opinion. I am not rating these books in terms of their historical place or whatever, what historians think about the books, what critics think about the books, what fans think about the books. I'm ranking them only in terms of my personal thoughts about each book, whether I liked reading them or not. It's a subjective list. So, 1-star books. The lowest spot on the list goes to Northern Lights by Tim O'Brien. Tim O'Brien is one of my favorite authors for The Things They Carried, as well as In the Lake of the Woods. Both books I think are masterpiece books. Northern Lights was his first novel, not the first book he published. The first book he published was called If I Die in a Combat Zone, Box Me Up and Ship Me Home. But Northern Lights was his first novel, and universally fans of Tim O'Brien say that Northern Lights is not a very good book. Well, I didn't think it was a very good book either. I pretty much hated this book. The main reason was repetition. I won't go into it now, but in the description I will try to post links for some of these books, including Northern Lights, where I go into a little bit more detail about each book. And yeah, Northern Lights really bothered me with the writing itself, the repetition Tim O'Brien used in Northern Lights. I hated the book. I don't know exactly what he was going for, which author he might have been trying to imitate, but I hated it. So, I hated Northern Lights. I really wanted to give it a good shot because I knew going in that the book was pretty widely panned. So I was like, okay, well, at least maybe I'll find something good about it. And no, I really didn't. It just bothered me so much what was in the book. So yeah, Northern Lights, hated it. Next is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I was fairly optimistic about this one because this is a widely liked book. It's kind of considered Patrick Rothfuss's masterpiece, and I think it was his first novel, which I think is quite good when your first novel is widely considered your best. I was also real hopeful because I have a signed book by Patrick Rothfuss, The Slow Regard of Silent Things, I think it's called. Well, anyway, so I began reading the book, The Name of the Wind, and the first thing that concerned me about the book is it's a really long book. But what actually really wound up being the deal breaker for me is that the book has, I think, a lot of adjectives, just saying so-and-so said quickly, so-and-so said angrily, so-and-so said happily. There's just so much repetition of that. It was driving me crazy, and I think it's pretty poor writing generally. I think Stephen King said the road to hell is paved with adverbs, or maybe that's why they are adverbs, not adjectives. Did I say adjectives? I don't know. I don't really know English very well. But yeah, just having that in books, so-and-so said happily, so-and-so said angrily, whatever. You should not really write like that. That's pretty poor writing. You don't say so-and-so said angrily. You say so-and-so said clenching his fists in rage or something like that. That's better than just saying they said angrily. So, yeah, I really didn't like The Name of the Wind. I thought it should have been much better edited than it was, much more thoroughly edited. So I tried to read it, but I just couldn't get past those grammar issues. Next is Sphere by Michael Crichton. I actually saved this as my final read by Michael Crichton. Michael Crichton is one of my favorite authors, and Sphere is pretty widely considered one of his fan favorite books, along with Jurassic Park. I mean, some people may even like Sphere more than Jurassic Park, so I saved it till last, the last book I would read by Michael Crichton, hoping okay, this is a fan favorite book, I'll save it to last. And oh my gosh, I hated this book so much. The main thing was the protagonist. He was such a dunce. This guy was so dense. He would just ask the most obvious questions. I just hated the dude. So I would strongly recommend like checking out the link to that video in the description where I just like go after Michael Crichton for it, just how annoying this protagonist was. So I know it's a fan favorite book and I will still like preclude or whatever, prelude, whatever, just attach that to my comments of the book. Sphere is a fan favorite book. Fans of Michael Crichton love Sphere. I like Michael Crichton. I hated Sphere though. So yeah, if you want to read Michael Crichton, it is probably still a book you should read. It might be one of your favorite books by Michael Crichton, but personally, the protagonist just annoyed the hell out of me. I hated this guy. He was so freaking annoying. So I hated Sphere. It is, without a doubt, my least favorite Michael Crichton book. Absolutely hated it, just how annoying the protagonist was. The last book on the 1-star ratings is Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell. I didn't really know anything what to expect about this book going in, except I thought it would be like a Jane Austen-esque romance, like just talking about like marriageableness. And yeah, that's just a hard pass from me. And from what I read, that seems to be pretty much what the book Cranford is about. Just like this family and like the women in the family are just like trying to pick out their husbands or whatever. It's just boring. I hate that kind of book. I hate that kind of writing. It's just so dull, long-winded, boring, not my cup of tea. So maybe some people would like this kind of stuff, but not me. So I just hated Cranford. I could not get into it. There was nothing I saw that I could even begin to like say, well, this is okay. It's just a book that's like hard pass, not for me. It's a Jane Austen wannabe. Nope. And I just hate Jane Austen. I think she's one of the worst writers to have ever lived. I want to have a time machine, and Jane Austen would probably be like on the top 5 maybe for people I would want to kill. I just hate Jane Austen. So yeah, Cranford gets a 1-star rating from me. Now on to the 2-star books. So these are books that I thought were just okay. That's really all I can say about them. They're okay. They're not good, not great, not bad, not terrible. They're just okay. Beginning with Death of a Salesman by, is it Arthur Miller? I have a signed book by Arthur Miller somewhere. I think it's called Time Bends, which is sort of his memoirs. Death of a Salesman is one of the books on the top 1,000 list, 1,000 books to read before you die by James Mustick. And I'm sorry, I'm not like pointing out each book that's a top 1,000 book. So I was really reluctant going in because I knew that Death of a Salesman is a play, and I'm not really much into plays. I just find them difficult to read. And I suppose like with plays, you probably have to see them live to really get a good sense of what they're like, what they're about, just to hear like the emotion of each line, how it's delivered, and just the tension and whatever, just to tell how the play is actually performed. That may be vastly different than just reading it. So yeah, reading the play Death of a Salesman, I saw absolutely nothing that I was liking. It was just boring and unenjoyable. So I didn't like anything about Death of a Salesman whatsoever, but it's nothing I like actively hated where I'd say like this is bad. I just don't see anything good about it whatsoever. I mean, it's just like, okay, it exists, but I can't say anything more about it than that. And that's kind of what 2-star is. Like, it exists, the author tried. And that's how I view Death of a Salesman. It's just 2 stars. It's like, okay, it exists, but I don't care about it one way or the other. Next is The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky, I believe. I previously tried to read his book Notes from Underground because another booktuber strongly recommended that book to me, and I didn't like Notes from Underground. And then the bookstore owner said that he recommends people start out by reading The Idiot by Dostoevsky just because he says it's a little bit simpler of a read. And so anyway, I began reading The Idiot, even though it's not a top 1,000 book, and I could kind of see what the bookstore owner was talking about. Like, there were parts of the book that I actually kind of liked. Like, one of them was talking about this school teacher or something, I think in Austria maybe. And she gets, I think, tuberculosis. And it's just talking about like her story. And I really liked that. But the main rest of the story, I wasn't just liking it too much. I mean, it was like okay, but it was just also boring. So I'm really divided on this book, The Idiot. Like, maybe potentially I gave it too short of a leash, but oh, I did recall I actually looked up like the summary of the book when I decided to DNF it after like 100 pages or so. And reading the rest of the book, like the rest of the events of the book, yeah, I was just like, that doesn't sound very good. Um, so I don't know, I'm really divided on it. I definitely liked The Idiot more than I liked Notes from Underground. I just could not get into Notes from Underground at all. But I also had problems with The Idiot. I just didn't think it was really altogether that good of a book, even though there were definitely parts, like with the woman in Austria, the school teacher or whatever. I definitely did like that. That was like, okay, if the book could have been more like that, I could see giving this book 4 or 5 stars. But I don't know. So I had problems with the book, but yeah, so at least this time, finally, I'm actually able to say some good things about the book, some genuinely good things about the book. So we're kind of getting into territory now where I can start to see some good things about these books. Next is Such a Long Journey by Rohinton Mystery. And after just saying what I said about seeing some good things about books, this is kind of something where I did not really see anything good about this book. The thing about Rohinton Mystery, I have a signed book by him right here, A Fine Balance, which is a top 1000 book, and it's like widely been considered one of the 10 greatest books to ever come out of Asia. And so when I began reading that, A Fine Balance, my main takeaway was, wow, Rohinton Mystery writes exactly like I do. There's only one other author that I have compared to my own writing, and that is Richard Wright, the author of Native Son. So Richard Wright, Rohinton Mystery, and myself, we just seem to have very much the same writing, like our vocabulary is the same, our sentence structure is the same, our use of dialogue or use of description, just everything about how we write, I think is very similar to each other. We're like clones of each other, brothers from different mothers. Myself, Richard Wright, and Rohinton Mystery. And so with A Fine Balance, I saw those things that were like, wow, this sounds exactly like a book I would write. And so that made me think, of course, like, hey, this writing is pretty good. But at the same time, the book was also just so long, and I was just kind of losing interest in it because I didn't really think the plot was too good. Like, the characters weren't very good enough to carry the novel. It's very much a character-driven book. And I just wasn't liking it that much to be interested in reading this whole thing. So I wanted to try Such a Long Journey, which is Rohinton Mystery's first novel. And I was hoping, since it's a shorter book, I would like it more. And also I was curious whether I would also think reading the book that, yeah, Rohinton Mystery seems like he writes the same way I do. And first off, I didn't really get that this much this time at all. So reading Such a Long Journey, I did not think like, oh yeah, this sounds like exactly a book I would write. The book that seems similar to mine is A Fine Balance. Such a Long Journey, it seems like he was still kind of figuring out his writing style, maybe. So yeah, I did not like see myself in Such a Long Journey. But anyway, even though the book was shorter, I wasn't liking it as much. So having a shorter book did not help Rohinton Mystery for me. If anything, my takeaway was I definitely liked A Fine Balance more than Such a Long Journey. There was just so much more with the writing. It was just so much better written. And beyond just like my own personal connection with it, like thinking this is a book I would write, it was just a better book, A Fine Balance. So I really wanted to read every Rohinton Mystery book. I think he's only written 4 novels, I want to say, maybe 3. He also wrote a book called Family Matters, which I do have a copy of, so I will plan to read that eventually. But yeah, so I don't really know what to think about Rohinton Mystery after this point. At this point, I wish he would have written more novels. He's still alive, I think, in Canada, and he hasn't written any books, I think, since 2003 or 2005. And that's kind of disappointing to me. So I really wish Rohinton Mystery would write more novels. And yeah, so anyway, that's kind of my takeaway. I really liked parts of A Fine Balance just because writing was so similar to my own. I hoped I would like Such a Long Journey more because the writing, I mean, it was such a shorter book. But yeah, there was nothing about the book that drew me in. So it was really quite a disappointment. Next is The First Man by Albert Camus, I think is the way to pronounce his name. So this is my first try of an Albert Camus book, and it's also the last book he ever wrote because he had a manuscript of it, like the rough draft, with him when he died in a car wreck. So he never finished this book. So first off, that makes it real difficult to judge this book because he did not finish it. So it is an unfinished work. He may have done a lot more work on this book than there presently is in it. So because of that, I give this book kind of a little bit of extra credit. It's an unfinished book. I don't feel I could really harshly judge Albert Camus' writing of an unfinished book. But as far as the book itself, I didn't really like it. I didn't see anything good about it. So I think the biggest thing is it's really a poor decision by me to start with this book because I just have not really had any appreciation of Albert Camus. I just don't know his writing style. So I couldn't really see exactly what he was going for in this book. You know, theoretically, each writer or artist should get better with each work. You know, as their talent improves, their art improves as well. And not having previously read Albert Camus, I just don't really know what kind of an artist he is. And reading this book, The First Man, I still don't know. So yeah, it really kind of hurts Albert Camus a little bit in my desire to read him. There is another book by him on the top 1000 list, I believe called The Plague. So I'll definitely read that at some point as well. But if I just don't see anything I like about it, I may just decide Albert Camus is not my kind of writer. But yeah, I don't want to judge the book too harshly because he did die before finishing the book, so it's an unfinished book. So I can't really judge it too harshly because of that. But having tried to read it, there was nothing I liked about it. Next is a title I love, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. This book is also known as Blade Runner. The film Blade Runner is based on this book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. A really weird title, but also a great title. It's a hilarious title, but yeah. Do they dream of electric sheep? I don't know. Anyway, what to say about this book? I previously tried to read Philip K. Dick's book, The Man in the High Castle, and I didn't really like it at all whatsoever. I saw it, I think I don't know what it is. Is it an Amazon show, TV show? I have not seen that show, but I saw the promotional materials for it and it looked interesting. So I wanted to read The Man in the High Castle, and also because it's a top 1000 book. So I tried reading it, The Man in the High Castle, and I just didn't like it whatsoever. I thought it was completely underwhelming. I do not know how you could make a TV series based off that book. You would really have to change everything about the book. Maybe just keeping character names. And I think that's kind of what they did for the TV show, because the book itself, the story itself, is just unmanageable. You cannot make a TV series based on that book. So yeah, reading that book really kind of made me think, Philip K. Dick may be a writer where the movies are better than the books. And also he wrote other stuff as well, like he wrote Minority Report, or the book that became Minority Report. I don't know if it was the same title or whatever, the book. He also wrote a book called We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, which was used to to make the film Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So Philip K. Dick wrote several fantasy sci-fi stories that became major movies. Blade Runner, Total Recall, Minority Report, The Man in the High Castle, and other things. So he's really a goldmine for stories, but having read The Man in the High Castle and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, I'm kind of thinking Philip K. Dick is a writer who the books are not as good as the movies. Usually people say it's the other way. Books are better than the movies. But in his case, I think the movies improve his books. I do definitely want to read We Can Remember It For You Wholesale because I really like Total Recall. So I want to see how that book compares with the movie. I think it might just be a novella, like potentially just like 100 pages or maybe not even that. I do not know. I've never found a copy of that book. But yeah, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? I have not seen the movie Blade Runner or any Blade Runner movies. The main thing I know about Blade Runner is there's a part in the video game Fallout 4 where you go to a settlement and they give you a test. And when I was reading the book Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, I realized, hey, that scene in Fallout 4 is a reference to Blade Runner because that test is from Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, like that exact kind of style of test. They're trying to find out if the person is a human or a robot, and that's from Blade Runner. So I was like, oh, that Fallout 4 scene is a reference to Blade Runner. So I thought that was really cool, and that really boosted my interest in the book. But the book was just pretty boring. I just don't really like Philip K. Dick's books. I like his ideas, like he has good ideas, but I don't think he really uses those ideas as well as he could have. Like, he should tell a different writer, like, hey, here are my ideas, and the other writer can figure out, like, okay, this is how you execute a good story on that. Philip K. Dick, I just don't think he did really good at that. And I know that's a really, controversial opinion in it, and especially as a writer, I should respect the work of other writers. But as a reader, I just don't really enjoy his books that much. So Philip K. Dick, yeah, that's kind of my view on him. He has some good ideas, but I don't think he uses them very well. I don't think he writes very good. But at the same time, I acknowledge he has come up with, English is so difficult. He has birthed, I guess, a lot of ideas that have been used for very successful movies or cultural references or stuff. So I definitely commend him for that. Next on the list is Foundation and Empire by Isaac Asimov. I think last year the book Foundation was out of nowhere my favorite read of the year, and I do not like science fiction fantasy very much at all, but I really liked the book Foundation because it seemed like the book Foundation was a retelling of the fall of the Roman Empire, but set in space. So as a fan of history, that was really enjoyable to me. So I put Foundation and Empire, the second book in the series, on my to-read list. And yeah, unfortunately, I just didn't like this book at all. I didn't think it was a worthy successor to Foundation. The biggest problem for it, for me, that killed the book is right at the start of the book, it says that there are actually two Foundations. And that really killed the stakes for me because it's like if the original Foundation is destroyed, it doesn't matter because there's a spare. And if the spare Foundation is killed, it doesn't matter because we have the original one still. So that really hurt the book for me. And also, I don't know exactly, I don't know how to say this exactly, but the summary or whatever for the third book in the series, it says right on the start something about in the aftermath of the destruction of Foundation something or other. And so it tells you right there that, oh, this Foundation gets destroyed in the second book. So that was a spoiler right there. And yeah, I'm not sure if I should really fault Asimov for that or the publisher or whatever. But going into the book, before even starting it, I knew the foundation gets destroyed. And when it says, oh, there's this other foundation as well, it just spoils it right off the bat. So that really made the book almost impossible to enjoy fully. Oh no, actually, the reason I knew about that was because at the start of the book, Foundation and Empire, the start of the second book, there's a table of contents. And like halfway into the table of contents, there's a chapter titled something like The Destruction of the Foundation or The Fall of Foundation or something. So it tells you in the table of contents that the foundation is destroyed. So that was just a spoiler in the table of contents. So I hated that. The chapter title alone spoiled the book. One of the things I liked about Foundation, though, the first book was, like I say, how it was a retelling of the fall of the Roman Empire but set in space. This book, Foundation and Empire, I guess kind of does the same thing, where there's like a general who is meant to represent, I think, maybe an Eastern Roman Empire general, like during the fall of the Western Roman Empire or something like that, where this general is kind of like building up his career and he may become like the emperor of the reunified Roman Empire or whatever. And so, yeah, I think that might have been Isaac Asimov's inspiration for this book, was like, okay, the Roman Empire has fallen, but there's still the Eastern Roman Empire, and there's this general who nearly like reunites the empire or whatever. So I think that was kind of his inspiration for the book. I did not actually know about that historical figure. If I did, I might have liked the book a little bit more, because I would have been like, oh yeah, I get it. This is a reference to such and such general. But I didn't know that. I didn't get that. So I didn't really like it at the time. I thought the book was more like a retelling or whatever of Julius Caesar. So you have this general who's going to basically overthrow the empire. So I thought it was Julius Caesar, but it's not. It's apparently based on this like Eastern Roman Empire general or something. So yeah, that is something I at least sort of like, because it's kind of continuing that trend of a retelling of the fall of the Roman Empire. So I like that. But anyway, Foundation and Empire, it just didn't work for me. I didn't like it. I didn't think it was a worthy successor. Having the chapter title in the table of contents or whatever, telling me that the foundation falls, it just killed the book. So yeah, and then I read the summary for the third book, because I really didn't plan on reading it at that point either. And the summary of the third book just sounds boring and just anticlimactic and just not good. So yeah, this book, Foundation and Empire, really killed my interest in the series. I really liked the first book, Foundation, but I'm not sure if he should have continued this series or not. I have heard some people say that they like Isaac Asimov's robot books more than they like his space stuff. So I think he also wrote the book I, Robot. I don't know if that's the exact title of the book or not. It might be. But yeah, so I mean, the film with Will Smith, I, Robot, based on a Isaac Asimov book. So that's interesting. So yeah, a lot of fans do like the robot books more than his space stuff, so I'll definitely be willing to give that a try. So yeah, anyway, that's my main takeaway. I definitely do recommend the first book, Foundation. The second book, it kind of killed the series for me, and really having that spoiler in the table of contents, it's just like, why do you do that? Why did the publisher do that? How could they do that? They spoil it in the table of contents. Last for the 2-star ratings is The Naked and the Dead by Norman Mailer. I previously read Norman Mailer's other book, one of his other books, The Armies of the Night, which is about his joining a Vietnam War protest at the Pentagon. And I liked that book very, very little. I think it won a Pulitzer, and of books that won a Pulitzer, I thought it was one of the better books that won a Pulitzer. I still didn't like it, but it was at least like, it's so-so, which is more than I can say for pretty much any other book that's won a Pulitzer. I do have a signed book by Norman Mailer, Tough Guys Don't Dance, and a couple other books by him are on the top 1,000 list, like up here, The Executioner's Song. I think that's his other book on the top 1,000 list. So it's definitely a book I want to read. I don't know though, because it is quite a long book. My takeaway for The Naked and the Dead, I think it was Norman Mailer's first novel and it really launched him to success. It was a pretty popular book. And I think it's about World War II, but it's a fictional story, like a fictional campaign. I want to say it might be, I don't know if it's about like an invasion of the Philippines, but it's definitely like a fictional story. I mean, fictional battles and all of that. And my problem with the book is basically there's a lot or a bit of profanity in it. And that's just something with Norman Mailer I knew about, is that Norman Mailer liked to be very profane. And I just don't like that, especially in books. I just don't like writers just like dropping the F-bomb every paragraph, because I think writers do it because they want to appear gritty. Like, oh, look at me. I'm gritty. This book is gritty. I use the F word. And to me, it's just really cheap. It's like, is that your whole vocabulary? Is just 4 letters? I just don't like it. I don't respect it. And yeah, I can respect it from like a free speech standpoint. Like if there are laws or whatever against censorship where the government is like, oh no, you can't use profanity. To me, I'm like, F that. I mean, people should be able to use all the profanity they want. But I'm not going to really like praise a book just because of that and be like, oh, this book has swear words. This is a great book. To me, the book was just, the profanity really just got in the way for me. And I understand people in the military would probably swear a lot, but I still didn't like it. So I would have liked the book more if it was like true to history, like if it was an actual battle, because then I could kind of get into it more from the historical point of view of it, like actually getting to kind of experience that battle and see what these soldiers went through. But instead it's all fictionalized. So I just didn't really like that too much. So I didn't like the book. I don't really want to I don't know how to say, like plainly, I did not like this book, The Naked and the Dead, but I don't really want to it's not like a deal breaker book for me. I knew going in that's probably what it would be like, because Norman Mailer is just that way. He's a very profane guy. And I knew that, and I'm really kind of okay with that in a way. Like I understand that's who he is. That's what I'm getting myself into. I'm not going to read about some good choir boy thing or whatever. But still, in terms of the writing itself, I just didn't really like it. So yeah, it's not a book that kills Norman Mailer for me. It's not a book that really pushes him super far down my to read list. But at the same time, it was one of his more popular books, if not his most popular book. So it definitely does hurt him a bit in my rankings, and it does make me a little bit less inclined to read him. But it's not so bad where it's like, oh, I give up on Norman Mailer forever, I still am a little bit interested in him. I want to read if he does have any books that are yep, that's a masterpiece book. I'm still waiting to find that. The Armies of the Night was just, didn't really like it too much. The Naked and the Dead, really didn't like it. So I'm still hoping there's some book out there by him that makes me think oh, yes, this is how I can see Norman Mailer had talent. I'm still waiting for that, hoping to find that. Okay, and now we go on to 3-star ratings. So these are books that I may have kind of liked a little bit. But maybe also they're books possibly I didn't really like, but I at least saw the book is worth something. There's some historical merit to the book. There's some merit with the writing, whatever. So these are books where especially to the right reader, these might be pretty decent books. Or in the right time, for their time, maybe they were decent books. Beginning with The Riddle of the Sands by Erskine Childers. I did not know anything about this before trying it. Apparently, it is one of the early spy thriller books. I didn't really know that when I was reading it, because reading the book, it's basically just like these guys go out on a boat, and it's just all this real long-winded, boring description about them on this boat. And yeah, that was just no fun. So I didn't like The Riddle of the Sands. I didn't really see anything good about it. I didn't know it was like a spy thriller when I was reading it. Like when I finally like decided after, I don't know, 75 pages or so to DNF the book and look it up, I saw that, oh, it's actually a spy thriller. And I was like, well, it didn't show any of that in the book. So I can respect that, being one of the early spy action adventure thrillers, whatever, but I just didn't get that reading the book. It just didn't seem like a thriller. It was just boring. So I didn't like it. Maybe it's a book where, like, knowing it's an older book, you know, be more patient with it. It's not going to be like a modern spy thriller. I have to be really, really patient with it and wait for like all the plot stuff to really kick in. I was just not that patient. But anyway, so yeah, maybe potentially it is a book I would be willing to give another try and give another chance. But that day is not today, and it will not be for quite a long while if I ever do give it another chance. Next is Goodbye to All That by Robert Graves. I knew of this author and title pretty well. I didn't know anything about the book really. So apparently this is a memoirs about Robert Graves, like early life and childhood, and then his experiences in the First World War. Robert Graves was most notably a poet. He also wrote some novels, but mainly I think he was a poet. I do not like poetry, so, you know, I can't speak on any of that. As far as like a writer goes, I liked some parts of it, like some description about his childhood and all that. I was liking it somewhat well, but there were other parts of it that I just thought were not very good. Like one thing I didn't like that was really weird was he was talking in the book about how going to like this all boys school in England, how like the kids in the school formed like homosexual relationships with each other and like used each other as sexual objects. And that's like literally what he says in the book, how they used each other for as sexual objects. And that's just like, this is weird. But what really killed the book for me once it started getting into like the World War One stuff is Graves like so carelessly talks about it. Like he says like, oh, this friend of mine went on and died in the war and this friend died in the war. And then when he's talking about like when he gets there, there's just no emotional attachment whatsoever. Like he doesn't say how losing his friends or anything, how it affected him, what it meant to him. He's just like, oh, they died. Oh, well, whatever. I don't care. And then he's talking about the war and it's just like, he doesn't seem to care. He doesn't seem to care about the deaths and all that. It just seemed really like there was a disconnect there. So I did not like that at all. Like, why doesn't he say, like, you know, this is my best friend, and then, you know, I received the news about their death, and it was just devastating to me, and, you know, I knew the boy's mother or whatever, or, you know, I had to be there when the boy's father, you know, cried or whatever, when he received the news or whatever. Or just himself, like when he learned about the news of their death or whatever, how it affected him. He doesn't give you any of that. He just matter-of-factly says, oh well, they died. I don't care. Moving on. So why should I care about his life and the people in his life when he doesn't even seem to care about them? I understand it's a book written in like a different time, so maybe like, you know, it wasn't cool at the time to talk about that stuff, like your emotional, you know, response to this. You know, you got to be like a manly man and whatever, like it doesn't affect you or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, so reading this book, I just didn't see that. Like, I couldn't connect with it. Like, he doesn't even seem to care about his own life. He doesn't seem to reflect on the war itself. Like, second guess himself. Maybe he does later on in the book, but I definitely didn't get that when I was reading the book. I didn't see any like recollection by him or whatever, any reconsideration he goes through, any way these deaths impact him. It just seems like he doesn't care. So I didn't really like Goodbye to All That. I liked it more than I thought I would for an autobiography or memoirs, but at the same time, there was so much more I think could have been better written for the book to really show you like a personal account of this and what it's like to lose this like whole generation of, friends and stuff. Next is On the Road by Jack Kerouac. I was really reluctant about this book because On the Road is like widely considered one of the great stream of consciousness books, and I do not like stream of consciousness writing. Like, it is definitely one of my least favorite genres out of everything. I hate stream of consciousness writing. And Jack Kerouac is known as a stream of consciousness writer, and On the Road is considered a stream of consciousness book. So that was a major red flag going in. Now, actually reading this book On the Road, I was liking it fairly well, and there were definitely scenes in the book I really liked. Like, there's a scene where he's in California and he meets this Hispanic woman, and just like talking about their relationship and stuff, I really liked it. So I definitely realized reading this book and like that scene especially that Jack Kerouac definitely was a talented writer. He had talent. I cannot deny that. And some parts of the book like that I really enjoyed. Other parts of the book I really did not enjoy so much. The main thing that really made me like not like the book too much. Oh, first off, I should say that the book On the Road is kind of a little bit of a fictionalized account of Jack Kerouac's like relationship with his friends. Jack Kerouac was part of what was called the Beat Generation in the 1950s, 1960s. And basically the Beat Generation, it's basically young men especially who are just kind of living life. Like, they're just kind of party animals and just like, sex and drugs and alcohol, partying, women, that's just kind of all they're doing. And so, yeah, part of the problem for me for the book is Kerouac, like, all his friends in the book, they're based on real people, but he gives them fictional names. Even himself in the book, he gives himself a fictional name, but it's all really based on real events. It's just fictionalized names and stuff. For when he would describe his friends, he would describe them like they are so important to him, and like these guys are like intellectual guys and they have like all these great conversations with each other, but you never get to see that. You never get to see what makes these guys interesting guys or why these people are friends. You do not see that, I think, in the book. It's just like very matter-of-factly like, oh, this guy is my best friend, I have an itch to go over to his house, and then I was hanging out with him for a few days or whatever and then moved on. But you don't actually get to see what makes this person a compelling person. You don't get to see why Kerouac and that guy are friends. You don't get to see what these people actually talk about, what they actually think about stuff. It's just they party, they drink, they smoke, they do drugs, and that's it. You don't see anything about why they're actually friends. Maybe part of the allure of the book is supposed to be like these guys are party animals. They're just hedonistic. They're just living their lives. Maybe that's supposed to be like the message of the book, like just, the freedom of just doing whatever you want. Maybe that's the whole appeal of the book. I didn't get that though. I wanted something more. I don't really feel like reading this book like I would see what would make these people interesting to be around. So I just didn't like it. So I like Jack Kerouac's writing itself. I think he's a good writer. But in terms of like really telling a story that keeps me hooked, I didn't get that. He was capable of that for sure, like with his stuff about the Hispanic woman. I was hooked there. I did care about that. I cared about her. I cared about that story. But then Kerouac is just basically like, I got bored of her and I wanted to go back east. I wanted to continue our road trip. And so that just really makes me not like it, because it's like, I like this woman. I want to see where that goes. I like this character. I want to see how that progresses. And Kerouac is just, I got tired of that and moved on. So I really just didn't like that too much. Like, I didn't get the sense of like, man, I wish I could have been with these guys and, lived this life with these guys. I don't really like these guys. I don't see anything good about them. I don't see anything intellectual about them. I don't see anything talented about them or whatever. I don't see what makes them friends. So yeah, I had problems with it for sure. But again, I do want to illustrate, I do think Jack Kerouac is a talented writer. And some of those scenes, I was hooked. Like the Hispanic woman, I liked that. There's definitely good writing here. There's parts of some good stories here. But also there's just a lot of stuff where it's just like they just get an itch to move or whatever. And yeah, I just had problems with that. So since this book is kind of considered Jack Kerouac's masterpiece, I'm not sure if I'll read anything else by him, because it's like, this is supposed to be his best book. Maybe potentially I would be willing to try something else by Kerouac, but I'd really probably give it a short leash. I would really be hyper vigilant looking for some kind of thing I could relate with. I understand he's a decent writer, but if I just cannot like connect with the character of whichever next book he wrote that I'd read, I'd probably just give it up and just decide, I don't think Kerouac writes relatable characters for me personally, really. So yeah, I'm really kind of hot and cold on the book. I liked it more than I thought I would, especially for a stream of consciousness book. I thought I would utterly hate the book and hate Kerouac, but there's actually parts of it where I'm like, he has talent here. He's actually a pretty good writer. So I cannot really say that for really any other stream of consciousness writer. So I definitely got to give him kudos for that. Next is Interpreter of Maladies by Jhumpa Lahiri. I don't think I knew anything about this book or author before, maybe. That title, Interpreter of Maladies, does sound fairly familiar, but maybe that's just because it's on the top 1000 list and I saw it so much. I don't know. So the main thing for this book, the main red flag for Interpreter of Maladies, is it's a collection of short stories. I do not really like short stories at all. But reading the book, I read probably 2 short stories, and my takeaway was I thought Jhumpa Lahiri is actually a really good writer. So in terms of short stories, I think she's just overall really solid. I cannot say anything negative about them whatsoever. I mean, they're just really solid, well-written short stories. So as a short story writer, I would say she is probably one of, if not the best I've ever read. Others who would come to mind would be like Octavia Butler. I liked her pretty well as well. I am not a fan of short stories though, but yeah, these are a couple authors where I tried them and I definitely see they have talent and they can write short stories very well. So if you want to read short stories, it's definitely something I think you could be interested in. And yeah, I can't say anything bad about it. It's just personally, I don't really like short stories. I'm not really interested in them. I don't want to read this whole book. Even though I like her writing, I just kind of read a couple stories and I got the sense I needed. Like, okay, she's a good writer. She can write short stories very well. I like them pretty well. I just don't really want to read them. I'm just not really into that. So yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with her writing whatsoever. I cannot say anything negative about her writing. It's just short stories aren't really my cup of tea, but I think among short story writers, Jhumpa Lahiri, from what I've read, the few short stories I've read, and the little bit I read by her, I would definitely say Jhumpa Lahiri would be one of the higher tier short story writers, along with Octavia Butler and I don't know who else. So yeah, I definitely like and respect the author from reading this, but not really interested in reading short stories. I don't know if she's written any novels or not. I would be open to trying those. But yeah, definitely a skilled writer. Next is Another Roadside Attraction by Tom Robbins. Tom Robbins was a local author. He lived in the town I grew up in, and he just died a few months ago. I think he was near 90 or something. And I think I posted my review of his book, Another Roadside Attraction. I think I posted my review literally like 2 days before he died. So maybe I put the kiss of death on him. I was kind of a little bit reluctant to read Tom Robbins just because he's a local author, and I think he's kind of like, a product of the 60s. So he wrote like a lot of kind of like hippie type stuff, a lot of like drug stuff, just like you're high on all the drugs and writing, really weird crap, which is not really my cup of tea. And I did get a signed book by him right down there, Even Cowgirls Get the Blues, which I think is the bookstore owner's favorite book by Tom Robbins. So I was kind of hopeful to read it since he was a local author, like kind of the most famous author in the county. And something that's also cool is this book, Another Roadside Attraction, actually like takes place. The book is set on the street I live on, basically, like just a block away. Which is just weird, so he's like describing the county and stuff, and it's like, oh yep, this is like 5 minutes from my house, oh that's 10 minutes from my house. So that's really interesting to read that, and yeah, so that was definitely enjoyable for me. And again, it's just funny reading a book that's set basically like one block over from where I live. That's cool. What to say about this book, Another Roadside Attraction? So basically, I liked parts of his writing for sure. Parts of it I think I actually quite liked. I can't really remember exactly everything that I really liked at this point. I don't know if I actually posted a full review of this book or not. I wish I did, but I'm really not sure if I did. I don't really remember doing that. But there were definitely some parts of this book, Another Roadside Attraction, that I really liked pretty well. Parts that I thought were funny, parts that I thought were just well written. So Tom Robbins did have, talent, I think. And the plot of this book, if you don't know, basically the corpse of Jesus is discovered and brought to Skagit County in Washington State, and it becomes a tourist attraction. So people come from all over the world to see like the body of Jesus, the corpse of Jesus. And so that kind of like disproves the Bible, it disproves that, he rose from the grave and ascended to heaven or whatever. So Tom Robbins was kind of writing it from a standpoint of like, what if we actually discovered the body of Jesus? Like, how would that change religion? How would that change our culture and stuff? But in spite of that, even though there were definitely parts of the book that were like decidedly like anti-Christian or anti-religious or whatever, I didn't really think the book was as anti-Christian as it could have been. So I mean, there is some, criticism of, religion and Christianity in the book, but it didn't really feel too much like a book where Christians would just get frustrated with this book and just get, pissed off at this book. This book is clearly a work of fiction. Tom Robbins is just kind of playing around here. He's having fun with it. It's not really too serious of a book. He might have these views that he's kind of working into his book, anti-Christian views or whatever, that he's kind of playing around with. So, I mean, yeah, it's not like he's just joking around, He may be wanting to tell some points here. But I didn't think it'd be a book that Christians would be too offended reading. I think most Christians would understand it's a work of fiction. And like my dad and stuff, who's like a very devout Christian, he likes this book. So yeah, it's not a book where it's like, this is going to offend every Christian, it's just a work of fiction, Don't take it too seriously. And I think most people don't really. They understand it's just, he's playing around here. And it's a pretty, funny book, kind of. So yeah, I don't really remember at this point like everything I liked or disliked about the book. I think I liked it more than I thought I would. I don't think I read the whole thing. I think I read probably, 200 pages of it. Probably around 65% or so. So yeah, I had some problems with it. It definitely wasn't my favorite book in the world for sure. But I kind of got the gist of it. I saw some things about it that I liked, like Robbins' writing, his storytelling, his humor, you know. There's definitely parts of it for all those things that I enjoyed, but at the same time, it's not like my favorite book in the world. So it's just a really pure 3-star book, you know? So there's things about it I definitely liked, that I saw potential in, that I saw were good, that I saw like to the right reader. I could definitely recommend this book. To other readers, though, you'd probably read the book and think this is utter trash. And I can see that. I can see people reading this book and just thinking, this book is crap. This book sucks. And I think that would be a pretty legitimate viewpoint, you know? There are things about this book where you might love the book, you might hate the book. For myself, I liked it okay. I thought it was a decent book, somewhat good, not really bad though. So more good than bad, I think. And yeah, so that's my views on Another Roadside Detraction by Tom Robbins. Next is The Portrait of a Lady by Henry James. I was really reluctant about reading this one. I am not sure if Henry James is actually considered part of the stream of consciousness writers. I don't really think so though. So my takeaway for Portrait of a Lady, ooh, this is difficult. I think I liked it more than I thought I would. Like parts of the writing I saw were like, okay, Henry James definitely does have some talent. He's definitely a skilled writer. And there's parts of the book that are like, you know, I could see it's close to being a 5-star book, but also there's just some like long-winded boring parts of the book, and just the plot isn't really altogether that good. And really the main failing for the book for me is the book is written like The Portrait of a Lady is supposed to be this American female character who's supposed to be like so interesting. She's supposed to be very beautiful. She's supposed to be very intellectual or whatever. Like she's supposed to just have a real great personality where a lot of people are drawn to her, and a couple guys or a few guys like want to court her and marry her. Like she's just like the perfect woman they've ever seen. But I did not get that at all reading the book, that why this woman was so interesting. Just nothing about her I thought was interesting. There was nothing about her personality that made her seem interesting or smart or charming or anything. It's just the author saying she's such a beautiful, captivating woman, but I wasn't getting any of that reading the book. So that was really the failing for the book for me. And that's kind of like the centerpiece of this story, is about this woman. And I just wasn't interested in her. I didn't like her. I didn't care about her. Reading the book, I thought my takeaway would be like, okay, Henry James, I at least see he has some talent here, but maybe his writing would better translate to short stories. And Henry James was also a short story writer. And one of the other books on the top 1000 list is The Aspirin Papers, which is a short story by Henry James. So I recently tried reading that just a couple weeks ago, The Aspirin Papers. And unfortunately, it's kind of funny, but my impression again was like, this book is too long. Even though it's a short story, just like whatever, 50 pages or something like that. I was just thinking, you know, this book could probably be cut by half. So pretty much everything I've read by Henry James, even though there's only 2 things, The Portrait of a Lady and The Aspirin Papers, both of them I thought like, you know, this could be decent, but it should be cut in half. And so yeah, that's my impression of Henry James. So reading the short story by him didn't really help. But at the same time, I did recognize, especially from Portrait of a Lady, not so much from The Aspirin Papers, more from The Portrait of a Lady, that Henry James definitely does have some talent there that I cannot and will not deny. He has talent. And part of his writing is more enjoyable than I thought it would be. It is kind of written a little bit like Jane Austen, like a male version of Jane Austen, even though it's, you know, kind of the same thing, like a lot of like female-centered characters and, you know, Jane Austen type stuff. It's kind of in that same style, kind of that same genre, But yeah, there were definitely parts about his writing that I thought, he has some talent here. So the Portrait of a Lady, I have a little bit more positive thoughts than negative. I definitely had some very strong negative feelings about just not caring about the character. But in terms of Henry James' actual writing, which to me is kind of paramount in a way, I really want, I really want to respect good writers. I think from reading this book, Portrait of a Lady, that I definitely see Henry James is in that tier where he had talent. So because of that, he kind of does become a recommended read author just because there is some talent there. So maybe people would like his books more than I did. And yeah. Next is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This book I had some pretty high hopes for because I have a couple signed, or no, I have one signed book by Robin Hobb. Another booktuber I was watching said that Robin Hobb had some of the best world building he's ever read in fantasy books. So that made me interested to read a Robin Hobb book. And this book, Assassin's Apprentice, is part of her most well-regarded series. The signed book I have by her is part of a series that I've seen no one talk about. So I think that book might not be very good compared to Assassin's Apprentice. Oh, and there's the signed book right over there. Assassin's Apprentice. So I really began this book with high hopes. I really wanted to like this book. I wanted to see what the other booktuber was talking about for Robin Hobb's world building. And my recollection of this book, I think I read somewhere around 300 pages of this book, maybe 350 pages. I think somewhere close to 80% of the book, 75% or so. And yeah, so I definitely gave this book every chance in the world to try to pull me in and keep me, hooked and all that, because I really wanted to like this writer. And I also think Robin Hobb may be a local author. I think she might live in Seattle or the Seattle area. So I don't know if I posted a full review of this book or not. I may have just done a short of it. I really struggled with this book. So, I want to start off with some kind of good, to say, I saw this good thing about the book. But really, after reading it, I was just really underwhelmed by this book. And for the world building that was supposed to be so good, I just didn't see very good world building about it at all. There were so many things introduced in the book that were not fleshed out. And I get that the author may have been saving some of that for later books. But I don't really like that, where the chunk of your world building, oh, you have to read a different book to find out more about that. I don't like that, because it's then you're just throwing crap at readers that you're not explaining, what is this kingdom that you've just mentioned? Who is the king of that? Are they at war or are they at peace? What is this other race you mentioned? What is this disease that you're talking about? Who is responsible for that? And just on and on, the magic systems and this assassin's order and stuff. And just all these things about this book, where there's so much in the book where I'm okay, this should have a lot of detail, This could have a lot of world building, but the world building I thought was just incredibly flat. It would just mention something and then it would just skip over that and it'd never come back to it. It would never flesh it out. So I really was not impressed with this book at all. I just kept waiting for something to happen, for the world building to take off, for the character to be real good. Because basically this character is kind of the stereotypical stable boy, former, blood of a prince, where he becomes the hero to save the world. He becomes, the fighter against the Dark Lord kind of guy. Just real stereotypical thing. Every fantasy book has that, And I just didn't see that the book or whatever added anything to the genre where it does anything that no one else has done before, or that it does it better than anyone else has done it before. I just really could not see the hype about this book at all. And I know I'm really only saying negative things about this book, and that really is kind of my takeaway. I was really disappointed with his book, Assassin's Apprentice. But I don't know. I think the reason I'm kind of giving it this higher ranking is because I did give it so long of a leash, like 300, 350 pages or so. I gave the book every chance in the world, and I kept thinking like, okay, just hang on, Sean. I know I tend to DNF books really easily, but just hang on. The writer's going to like pull this all together, and it's all going to make sense. It's all going to come together. And it just wasn't. And so I finally just read the summary of the end of the book, and it was just such a disappointment. It's like, that's all this was building toward. And then I read like the summary of the next book in the series and the next book in the series. And again, it was just like, it's so underwhelming. She's not like fulfilling the promise of all this world building she's setting up. It's just like she just abandons it. She just mentions things and never comes back to it, never fleshes it out, never develops it, never develops her characters, or just develops them in a really bad way, which I don't really want to go into because it'd just take too long. So I was just so underwhelmed with this book and just so disappointed with it. So I know based on my like review of the book, it should really get a much lower rating. I mean, like in terms of like my disliking books, it'd probably be like a 1-star book. But I don't know. There was so much about the book I really wanted to like it, and I kept hoping, just hang on, she's going to pull it all together, she's going to make use of all of this, in the next books she may like really flesh out this world more. I just wasn't getting it at all. So, since this is kind of considered her masterpiece, her most beloved series, Assassin's Apprentice, it pretty much killed Robin Hobb's books for me. So that's really disappointing. But I really struggled with this one. I really tried to give it every chance in the world, 300 pages or so, to try to pull me in, to do something to show me why this book is so popular among fantasy readers. Oh, another thing that I think the book is popular for is because like it's supposed to have like a lot of like LGBT representation or something. I didn't see that at all in the book though. I mean, like the main character is a male. He's not implied to be like gay or anything. I didn't see any gay characters or any trans characters. I didn't see any like diverse characters or characters of other, races or whatever. It just seems like such a generic, flat book. So how people are saying the world building in this book is so good, and like the diversity of the cast or something is so good, like the representation of the book is so good, I really don't get that. Like, was I reading a different book than what other people were reading? I don't know. So yeah, Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, it just did nothing for me whatsoever. I still give it 3 stars though, just because I was like, I really tried with this book. I gave it every chance in the world. And yeah, so maybe I'm giving it a little bit extra of a rating just because so many people do like this author. But yeah, I was really underwhelmed and disappointed with this book. Next is The Glass Palace by Amitav Ghosh. I did not know anything about this book or author before. Amitav Ghosh had some of the best writing I have ever read. Like seriously, among like perfectly written books, just masterpiece writing books, Amitav Ghosh, The Glass Palace would probably be a contender for top 5. Like, I don't know exactly who would be on that list. Like, Tim O'Brien, The Things They Carry, just perfect, beautiful masterpiece writing. The Sweet Hereafter by Russell Banks, just masterpiece. Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. There were parts of the writing of that book that were just masterful. Like, her use of description was just great. That's how you should use description. So yeah, Amitav Ghosh would be like in that tier of just beautiful writers, just great writing. But at the same time, Amitav Ghosh had, what was his problem he did? Ooh, I'm struggling to remember now. There was something about his book that just drove me crazy. I don't think it was repetition of and or like. I think I need to look up my review of this book to see what that problem was.
The Glass Palace by issue, but this writer clearly abounds in talent. This is, in spite of its flaws, one of the better written books I've ever read. I have to give it 5 stars. I thought, even if I wind up DNFing this book, I've done one more edit of the book to drop down on the word what.
Yeah, so the problem with this book, The Glass Palace, was repetition of the word was. There was just so much in this book, repetition of was. Like, I would strongly recommend, like, check out the description of this book and click, like, the link for my review of this book, where I show you guys, like, all the repetition of was on each page. It was just insane. Just was. It was just insane. It was just so poorly written. Like, edit the book, cut down on those. And he just had so much of them. So it was really a contrast, like some of the best writing I've ever read, just beautiful writing. And then he just have repetition of was just all across the page. So it's both at once. It's like really bad amateurish writing, like edit the book, and then just beautiful writing, perfect writing. So I'm really torn on that. Like, if this book did not have that issue with repetition of was, it would easily be a 4-star book, potentially a 5-star book, potentially one of my favorite books of all time. But repetition of the use of was by itself, that like could threaten to make this a 1-star book. It just kills an otherwise phenomenal book. So yeah, beautiful writing, great use of description, masterful description. I love the details of this book. I was liking the characters pretty well. It was just repetition of was killed the book. It made it truly unreadable because it's just word, was, word, was, word, was, word, was, word, was. Oh, it was just so annoying. So I'm really divided on this book. I cannot really recommend the book too much unless you think like this would not bother you. If you don't think you would pick up on that, like it wouldn't bother you saying was, like what's wrong with was? Was is a real common word. For me, it bothers me because I don't think you should write like that, like saying the boy was sad. That's just a real weak sentence. So you write like the boy whatever had teardrop eyes or whatever, just sadness, whatever, swelled across the boy's face. That's better than saying the boy was sad. You don't say the girl was happy. You say the girl smiled magnificently or whatever. I hate the word was. It's just weakens so many sentences. I mean, I understand it's a real common word, but I think in writing, it could be a sign of weak writing. And yeah, it bothered me. I noticed it for sure. Before long, I could not read the book anymore. I was just reading word, was, word, was, and it became unreadable. Next is A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin, and I have a signed book by her right there. That's real cool. Ursula K. Le Guin, Dancing at the Edge of the World. And this book is actually like inscribed to her neighbor, which is real cool. Okay, A Wizard of Earthsea. The main thing I saw about this book was, well, let's see, how exactly do I say this? I began reading it from the library, and I thought, it's okay. I'm not really a fan of fantasy. So I was like, well, it's okay. And then I read somewhere that the book is famous because it has a diverse cast. Like pretty much all the characters in the book are like dark-skinned characters, and it's a fantasy book. And that's just like kind of such a trope with fantasy, is that, it's all white characters, it's all European characters. And so this book, written I think in the 1960s, Ursula K. Le Guin, whatever her name is, had pretty much all black cast for her book, which is interesting, and I definitely do commend her for that, for having that representation in a fantasy book at that time. Especially, I mean, it's real common now, like writers nowadays, they like deliberately have diverse casts, they make a point of it. But Ursula K. Le Guin was doing this in the 1960s, when theoretically there would have been like a much more pushback against that. Where like even just having one black character would have been like, oh my god, you have a black character in the book? You know, that would have been more shocking then. But she had like all the characters black, all of them. So anyway, with this book, I would again like recommend watching my review of it, my full review, because I go into more detail, and I really don't want to like hit all the points of that now. So again, I would recommend checking out that review in the description. So really, just to really summarize it, because I've talked about A Wizard of Earthsea in a couple videos already, I really liked some parts of it, some parts of the writing, some parts of the storytelling. Not so much the world building. I really kind of had problems with her world building. It really was quite flat after like reading the book and thinking about it. The world building wasn't too good. But some of the stuff with the characterization and stuff was real good. Like one of the fairly early scenes, the main character is like taking on a swarm of dragons. That was just like an oh my god scene. Like, holy crap, this guy is just fighting dragons left and right. That was real cool. There was also a scene involving a stone that this princess says is like, you know, darkness, basically. Like you have to use evil to defeat evil. And again, I don't really want to go into that. Check out my full review to see what that's all about. But that part was also like masterful. Like that part alone nearly gave this book 5 stars. Just reading that scene, I was like, okay, this is a great book. That scene totally won me over. But then I had so much problems with the ending of this book. Again, I don't want to go into detail about it here, but the ending, it just kept building up, like trying to build suspense for how this book would end. And like at the very start of the book, I figured out the ending. And just the whole time reading this book, I just thought of this one thing, like just try this. And the whole book is just stringing you along, wondering how this guy is going to defeat this dark force, basically. And I figured it out from the very first moment of the book, and that was the ending of the book. And it was just so anticlimactic. It was like the most obvious ending in the entire world. Like, I had so many problems with that. So that really killed the book for me. Then I also tried reading the next book in the series, which I think is called like The Tombs of Etuan or something like that, because I was really interested to see how Ursula K. Le Guin like continued this world, where she went from here. And also there were other stuff as well, like this other land that she was going to talk about, this other like island or whatever, was populated more by white people. And so I was really curious to see how she would present them in the book, like whether they would just be like barbaric, evil people or whatever. And yeah, there's more I could go into for that. But yeah, trying to read The Tombs of Etuan, I was really underwhelmed by it. So I definitely did like A Wizard of Earthsea more. There were definitely parts of it I really liked, like the scene fighting all the dragons and the thing with the stone about like using evil to defeat evil. That was just a great part of the book. But there were other parts, like the ending, that was just so anticlimactic and just bad, and the world building was quite flat. So there are parts about this book I really like, other parts about the book I really did not like. All in all, I would really commend the author for having the thing with the like dark skin cast or whatever. I like that, especially in the 1960s, to be that, you know, I don't know if progressive is the right word, but you know, to be that inclusive kind of in the 1960s, to be doing that in the 1960s, I really commend her for that. But for the world building, it's just not very good. The ending was quite terrible. So I'm really divided on the book. All in all, I would really not put it like on the same tier as like Lord of the Rings or a Game of Thrones or I don't know what else. Harry Potter. You know, it wouldn't be on that tier at all. All those other books are far better than this one. But there were parts of it that I liked for sure. So again, I think 3 stars is quite an ideal rating for the book. Like, yeah, there's things I like about the book, things I even may love about the book, but there's also things I hate about the book and things I don't like about the book. So 3 stars is a pretty average review, and I think that's kind of ultimately what the book is. Some great stuff, some terrible stuff, some good, some bad, some just okay. So perfect 3-star book. Last of the 3-star ratings is Why Not Victory by Barry Goldwater. I have a signed copy of this book. Barry Goldwater was the Republican nominee for president in 1964. He ran against Lyndon Johnson. This was like a year after John F. Kennedy's assassination, and Lyndon Johnson creamed Barry Goldwater in the election. And so just to touch on that, reading this book, the main like issue with Barry Goldwater is he was kind of accused of being like pro-war and like pro-nuclear war. And reading this book, Why Not Victory, it's a book about his foreign policy. I think it was written before his presidential campaign. He does talk in the book about how we should invade Cuba, so that is in the book. He does say we should invade Cuba. He also says like we should not disarm our nuclear weapons. We should in fact build more of them and stuff. And I think there was like quotes later on, like during the Vietnam War, where Goldwater may have said like we should nuke the forests of Vietnam to like deforest Vietnam so we don't have to fight in jungles, just like, oh, well, just nuke the forests. And so, yeah, usually the thing, again, I talk about it in my other review, Barry Goldwater is kind of considered one of the more libertarian leaning people to run for president, and I kind of like that. And usually libertarians are more like anti-war, but not Barry Goldwater. Barry Goldwater was more of the opinion like, we have nukes, we should just use them. And so that's just terrible. Like if you use nukes in war, even like small nukes, like battlefield nukes, a nuclear weapon is a nuclear weapon. And if you use nuclear weapons in war, I think once a nuke gets used in war, everyone's going to start launching their nukes. Everyone. And there are so many nuclear weapons in the world that basically it would be the end of all life on Earth. So no, you cannot use nuclear weapons in war. We cannot do that. That will be the end of all life on Earth. And Barry Goldwater apparently was like, let's do it, you know? So no, let's not do it. So that 1964 election was garbage. Like whichever way it would have went, whoever would have won, America was screwed. Lyndon Johnson or Barry Goldwater. So, yeah, just an awful election choice, 1964, Goldwater or Lyndon Johnson. Because also Lyndon Johnson really escalated the Vietnam War, and he also had a lot of welfare programs, which I don't really want to get into that, the politics of that. But yeah, just 2 awful candidates. America is screwed no matter what. So anyway, I was really interested in reading this book, Why Not Victory, because I really wanted to read Barry Goldwater in his own words. Like maybe his, like the whole thing is about his willingness to use nuclear weapons. Maybe that was like invented like as a political attack. Like there was a real famous commercial, this young girl picking daisies, and then there's a nuclear bomb explosion, and kind of the commercial goes like, if you elect Barry Goldwater, we'll have nuclear war. That was a real effective ad, and it really killed Barry Goldwater's campaign. And so I really wanted to read Barry Goldwater in his own words, him describing his own policy. And there were parts of it, well, I don't really want to get into it. Really, again, check out my full review of it. It's a pretty short review. I think it's only like 4 minutes. But reading that book, Why Not Victory, I was bored by it. And I like this kind of stuff. I like politics. I like, election stuff. I was really interested in it because I have a signed copy of this book and I wanted to like Barry Goldwater. I wanted to know in his own words what he really believed. And it was just pretty boring. It was pretty dry, wordy, boring. Like, I would not have read this book and thought like, oh yes, we need to vote for Goldwater. It was just such a dry, wordy, unenjoyable book, and just like full of just like phrases and slogans about like fighting the communists and like we need to win, and just this real like rah stuff, you know, just real campaign speech stuff. But it just wasn't very good. So reading the book, I was just bored by it. And then again, there were things about the book that were really like red flags, like talking about how we should invade Cuba, because that would really put us on a quick path toward war with the Soviet Union. Because if we would have invaded Cuba, the Soviet Union probably would have responded by invading Berlin. And if they did that, basically we would be at war with the Soviet Union, and then it would go nuclear. And then we'd have nuclear war, and we'd all be dead. So yeah, not really the best idea to invade Cuba. And then of course, you know, all the stuff, you know, afterwards, like, you know, with the Iraq war and stuff, the American people are so reluctant about like regime change wars. So just the idea of like, oh, let's just invade Cuba and replace them with a pro-American government. It's like, we tried that in the Iraq war. It did not work out. And there's a lot more I could go into it for that, and, you know, politics of it. But yeah, that was definitely something where it's like, I really didn't like Barry Goldwater as much as I was hoping. Like, I was hoping maybe I'd find something where it's like, no, Barry Goldwater actually had the right idea. No, reading the book, I'm like, yeah, it's pretty much a good thing this guy did not win election. This guy could have destroyed humanity. I mean, just like his basically pro-war stuff, he very likely could have made us get into a nuclear war with Russia. So yeah, we'd all probably be dead today if Barry Goldwater won the election. So probably a good thing he didn't win. So anyway, yeah, really my main takeaway that I want to say about the book, though, is it just wasn't enjoyable to read. It was just boring. I got bored reading this book. And I like Barry Goldwater, and I wanted to be interested in him. And I liked it because I have a signed copy of it. So if even I myself was bored of the book and also thinking like, ugh, red flag, I'm kind of glad this guy didn't win. Yeah, the book had problems for sure. It definitely did not redeem Barry Goldwater in my view. It did not make me a strong Barry Goldwater supporter. If anything, it's just like, yeah, America is screwed for that 1964 election. Whichever way we go, we are screwed. So, yeah. In the past, I used to think like if there was any election I could reverse, it would have been 1964 and Barry Goldwater. Because it'd be like, hey, let's finally try a libertarian president. But no, Barry Goldwater is not the election I would want to have, like, do a do-over of. So I kind of would want to say, like, of recent elections, like, which one I would overturn, but I don't want to really delve into politics too much. And now moving on to 4-star. So 4-star are books that I definitely liked, and there's going to be very few of these. First is War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. This is not a book on the top 1000 list, but I was really interested to read it because it's War of the Worlds. Just one of the classics of science fiction fantasy, where this book kind of largely invented like the alien invasion genre. So anyway, again, I don't want to go into too much detail about this book because I think I posted a full review of it elsewhere. Again, maybe just a short. War of the Worlds, I liked parts of it okay. There are things I like about it. Like, the main thing I'll say that I liked about it is that it seemed like H.G. Wells was trying to keep the book very realistic. Like, he's not talking about like instant space travel or whatever. So like when the aliens like leave Mars for Earth, it takes them like several days or even a couple weeks to get here. So it takes time to travel through space. And there's just a lot of other things as well. Like it talks about how the aliens are not used to like our environment, like our oxygen and stuff. And just on and on. There's so many like little details where it's clear that H.G. Wells was trying to write something that's like could be accurate. And in a way, things he was writing about were way ahead of his time. Like he's talking about, oh, I don't know, just like spacecraft and stuff. And I think at that time, I'm not sure if like manned flight even existed yet. And he's talking about space travel. And another thing he talks about are like lasers, and he calls them heat rays, which you could both say, you know, that's lasers, but you could also say it's like microwave technology, both of which were unknown at the time, did not exist at the time. And H.G. Wells is writing about them. And like now today, we are just kind of beginning to get like laser weaponry and stuff. I don't know exactly how far along we are with that. I mean, we may have already had it for a while. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, so he's writing about some of this stuff, some of this actual technology that was 50 or 100 years ahead of his time. So I definitely commend that. I commend he is trying to write things that were realistic, like talking about like the coldness of space or whatever, or just about how Mars is not habitable or whatever for like us. So life on Mars would be different, acclimated or whatever, than life on Earth. A lot of like science fiction writers at the time, I think they kind of wrote about like alien species, like humans and Martians could just go from like one planet to the other, and like we could breathe on Mars and stuff. It's like writers at the time didn't seem to really understand like, no, we cannot survive on Mars. But it seemed like H.G. Wells knew like, no, Mars cannot support human life. And so anyway, I like those parts of it. In terms of the actual like alien invasion stuff, this is tricky. There were essentially, I didn't really like it too much. Just it wasn't very relatable. People made weird decisions in the book, especially the main character, because he seems to like just like stay in one spot or like go a little bit, like just go down the block and then stop and then just kind of hang out there for a while and whatever. Like just the guy's decisions didn't seem to make sense. Like if I saw aliens land and begin wiping out humanity, I would be gone, you know. I would keep moving. But this guy, he's like, he goes down a couple blocks, then he's like, oh, actually I want to go home for some reason. Then he like goes home, then he's like, well, it's getting late, so I'm just gonna go to sleep. And it's like the aliens are like a mile away and the guy's just like, oh well, I'm gonna go to bed. And so yeah, there were just weird descriptions there. And kind of the funny thing for me about the book is the best part of the book is seeing all the British people get killed, because like all these towns and stuff just get annihilated. And I was like, you know, good riddance, like goodbye. And, you know, I think there was actually a quote H.G. Wells had when he was writing the book where he told a friend something like, you know, in the book I'm working on, I just killed like all the people of my town or whatever. And he's just kind of talking about how like, you know, he just enjoyed doing that. Like, oh, yep, all this town is gone now. So, yeah. So there were things about the book I kind of liked, but also things that were just kind of boring and could have been better written. So I'm really divided on the book. Like I do commend the book for its place historically, just like how this book affected science fiction fantasy stories. It's definitely a classic and I respect that. But again, in terms of like the actual writing itself, I didn't really enjoy it all that much. There wasn't too much about the writing itself that I liked. So it's more the other things about the story I liked. It's about the early alien invasion, you know, story, you know, one of the early invasion stories, the classic alien invasion story. I commend him for that. I commend him for the different technology like the heat rays or the lasers and all that, and just the differences between the humans and the Martians biologically and all that, and kind of how he ends the book where instead of the humans rallying together to defeat the aliens to show how the aliens actually meet their end, it's just a really well conceived idea instead of just the classic like, oh, the humans band together and defeat the aliens. It doesn't end that way. So there are things I like about the book, but other things, especially with writing, that weren't all that impressive to me. But still, it is H.G. Wells, it is War of the Worlds, it is like the classic for alien invasion genre, really for maybe like the whole outer space genre. So I definitely respect it for that. And yeah, so I think that does push the book into 4-star territory where I can genuinely say like, okay, this is like a classic territory, classic tier where even if you don't really like the book, you should still read it and you should still respect it. Next is Spartacus by Howard Fast. I was really interested in reading this one because I really like the film Spartacus with Kirk Douglas, and so I wanted to read this book. This is largely what the film Spartacus was based on, was a book by Howard Fast. And again, I talk about it all in my review for the book, and I think I do like a full review of that book, like potentially like a 15-minute review or something like that. I don't know exactly how long it may be. So yeah, I would recommend clicking over to that if you want to know my full thoughts on the book. But anyway, my like real short thoughts on the book are I liked the book pretty well. There were a lot of changes from the film, especially at the start, and how it presents the Spartacus character, because basically the book begins like with Romans moving down the street and there's all the crucified gladiators. So Spartacus and the gladiators have actually lost at that point. And then it's these Romans talking about how they knew Spartacus or what they knew about him and talking about the slave revolt and all of that. So it's a very different book than the movie. And usually I would want to compare like, is the movie better or is the book better? I would say for this, they're both different in their own ways. Like I would still probably think the movie presents it better. But still, in spite of that, it's interesting reading the book because it is quite so different. So very different read than just watching the movie. It's not just like I'm reading a novelization of the film. The novel is quite different than the book. So both are enjoyable to experience on their own. And I definitely like want to give writers credit. So, give Howard Fast credit for writing the Spartacus story. Another thing I give Howard Fast a lot of credit for is that Howard Fast was actually sent to prison for a few months, I think, because he refused to testify to Congress about like what he knew about this like communist group in the United States. And I am a big believer in freedom of speech and freedom of association. So I believe if people want to be a communist, that is entirely their right. And so I just really kind of sympathize with Howard Fast because of that. Like, he was sent to prison just because he was kind of a communist and he did not want to like rat other people out. And I respect that. So I respect him for that reason. And part of the film with Spartacus, Kirk Douglas, is that film helped to like break the blacklist because they had several different people in that film, like, written by Howard Fast. And they also had a guy named Dalton Trumbo write the screenplay for the film Spartacus. And Dalton Trumbo was also blacklisted, which means like he was, connected or accused of being a communist. And so Kirk Douglas basically came around and said, I don't care if they're blacklisted. I'm going to use them and I'm going to make this film. And I respect that because, again, I really believe in freedom of speech, freedom of association. Even if it's something I disagree with, I respect people's rights to have those views. And, if they're not violent, if they're not supporting violence, if they're not supporting violent revolution or whatever, if they're just a communist or whatever, they're free to be that. So anyway, I did kind of not like the book Spartacus, like toward the end. It did get kind of a bit boring, except there is one scene where this gladiator slave guy is crucified, which is really just kind of a haunting scene, and it's always kind of bothered me ever since. It's just that scene has really stuck with me. Which I kind of don't like because I just don't want that scene in my head and I haven't been able to get it out. Just a real vivid graphic scene. But there were things about the end, like this slave gladiator guy who's crucified. It goes into like his whole life story and how he knew Spartacus. And that's really how the book shows you Spartacus's story. How do I say? Where you really get to see more how the Spartacus story played out. Because like I say, the book has it where Spartacus has already been defeated. So it's through this crucified gladiator slave guy where you really get to know more about Spartacus's life and his rebellion. And I don't know, just at that point, I'd really kind of lost interest in it. So the book did kind of peter out for me, just like my interest in the book. But still, in spite of that, I definitely like some of Howard Fast's writing. Some of it's very good, very enjoyable. It's very enjoyable for me to read and just to see how different it was for the film. So this is not a case where I would say like, oh, skip the book, watch the film. You know, I would say do both of them. They're both good in their own way. And I definitely want to give Howard Fast credit for, you know, the whole free speech and freedom of association thing. I support that. And the book in and of itself, I think is pretty good. It's pretty enjoyable. There were parts about it that I thought I got bored with it a little bit. But on the whole, I'm glad I read it. It's definitely worth reading. It's an enjoyable experience trying to read it and just seeing how different it is from the film. So definitely an enjoyable read, 4-star book. Okay, and now with 5-star books, and there's only 2 of them, so this would be my number 2 book of the year. 5-star books pretty much goes without saying. These are, I don't want to say these are like masterpiece books because both of them do not fit in that tier, but these are more books that are just like 5-star. They do everything they should. So it's not books that I'd say masterful, greatest books of all time. These aren't in that tier of 5-star books, but they are in 5-star tier books where they're just flawless. I mean, they do everything they should. There's nothing bad I can say about them. They do everything they set out to do. Just all in all, very good books. Beginning with Magic by William Goldman. William Goldman is the author of The Princess Bride, and I have a signed book by him right there. William Goldman, Which Lie Did I Tell, which I love. One of my favorite signed books ever, a signed book by the author of The Princess Bride. So I really wanted to read every William Goldman book just because he wrote The Princess Bride, which I love. I think it might be definitely among my top 5 favorite books of all time. But I really wanted to give William Goldman credit because he wrote a lot of stuff. Like one of the more notable things now is that he wrote the screenplay for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid with Paul Newman and Robert Redford. Robert Redford just died a couple weeks ago. Real sad. William Goldman wrote the screenplay for that film, which is just weird to me to think about because it's one of my favorite movies, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and William Goldman wrote it. So I wouldn't have thought, like, watching that film, like, oh, the guy who wrote The Princess Bride wrote Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He also wrote several other stuff as well, like The Marathon Man, which I've seen once, but that's kind of a classic film, and he wrote some other stuff as well, like the film Misery, based on the Stephen King book. William Goldman wrote that screenplay as well. So William Goldman wrote both novels and screenplays. And so Magic is one of the books he wrote, and he also wrote the screenplay for it, and it became a film with Anthony Hopkins from Silence of the Lambs fame. And the film Magic as a kid terrified me. Like, it was legit the scariest movie I'd ever seen. For years, that film like haunted me and gave me nightmares, and I think I only saw it once. And basically, the film Magic is, and the book as well, it's about this ventriloquist who has this dummy, and murders begin happening. And so the guy kind of wonders, the audience wonders, is the dummy the one doing the murders, or is the guy himself the one doing the murders? And anyway, even though the film terrified me as a kid, I really wanted to read the book just because it's by William Goldman, and I wanted to see how the book was, and I wanted to read every William Goldman book. Well, I read the book and I really liked it. So I don't really know too much what to say about it, but it was just a really enjoyable read, except there was one thing in the book that drove me crazy. Is toward the end of the book, there are probably 2, maybe 3 chapters really out of the blue where the author, William Goldman, like begins using run-on sentences, where he just decided that part of his style is he's going to stop using periods. So he used run-on sentence, blah, 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 and then and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. Just a run-on sentence like 2 pages long or whatever. And he did it like 3 or 4 times in the book. And that alone, like 85% into the book, maybe 90% into the book, that almost made it an instant DNF and like a 1-star rating. It bothered me so much because it was so out of the blue. This was like, I don't even know what, like chapter 15 or something. And then all of a sudden he just starts using these really obvious, blatant run-on sentences. And it's just like, why are you doing this all of a sudden? And then it's like, okay, that was weird. And then like 3 chapters later, he did it again. And it's like, what the hell are you doing, William Goldman? Why are you doing this? And that bothered me so much. I hated that so much. But I just persevered. I just kept reading because I only had like at that point, like 15 pages to go. But it was bothering me that much where I was seriously like, F this book. I hate this. But I just pressed on and I finished the book. So I liked it a lot. And one thing I'll say about it is it was really clear reading the book what the answer is, whether the guy himself is doing the murders or whether the dummy is doing the murders. It's really not much of a mystery. And I went ahead and actually bought a copy of the film to watch it again. And I was really kind of terrified watching it. Like, oh God, is this going to freak the hell out of me? And it was actually a pretty funny movie. I mean, even the parts that were supposed to be horrific, like about the murders and stuff, I was laughing. It was just unintentionally funny, I think. And yeah, so it's just kind of funny to me just thinking like, this is a hilarious movie. And there was one line in it, in the book, and it was also in the film as well, that I loved, that was hilarious laugh out loud line, where the dummy says, whenever he has a wet dream, he wakes up covered in sawdust, which is just hilarious because, you know, he's a dummy. He's made of wood. So, you know, he's covered in sawdust. That's hilarious. That's a great line. So anyway, I really liked the book Magic. And then when I went back and watched the film, it was enjoyable as well. It was really weird seeing Andrew. Why is it going to say Andrew Johnson? Is that anything like that guy's name? Is it Anthony Hopkins? Yeah, Anthony Hopkins. I guess I was going to say Andrew Johnson because I was thinking Anthony. Anyway, Anthony Hopkins. I always get him mixed up with Anthony Perkins, who was the guy from Psycho. But Anthony Hopkins, I think, is the guy from Silence of the Lambs. Anyway, what I was going to say was it really seemed like a weird role for him. Like he was doing just like a different voice kind of in that movie, and also like the voice of the dummy and stuff. And it just seemed really weird watching him in that role. One thing I will say is that I do think the film follows the book very closely, even though, again, William Goldman did write the screenplay of the film. You know, it kept to it pretty well. So, I mean, I think the film is probably like 90, maybe even 95% similar to the book. There's stuff with the backstory that it cuts out, but for most of the rest of the book, it's almost verbatim. I mean, most of the rest of the movie, it's pretty much verbatim with the book. So anyway, I really liked it. I was really reluctant about reading the book Magic because I liked The Princess Bride, but I knew going in the book Magic would be so different than The Princess Bride. It would not just be, you know, The Princess Bride 2.0. It'd be a very different book. But in spite of that, I really liked it. So I liked Magic a lot. I'm really glad about reading it. And I don't know what to say exactly. I'm kind of a little bit concerned now because, like, I liked The Princess Bride. I mean, I love that book and I loved the book Magic. So, like, William Goldman is 2 for 2 for me. Great books. So I'm kind of worried now, like, if he raised the bar, because now I'm going to think I really liked The Princess Bride. I really liked Magic. So now I should really like whichever next book he wrote that I read. But I don't know. So I am like set up for disappointment because if I start to read the next William Goldman book, I may just think, you know, this isn't as good as The Princess Bride. This isn't as good as Magic. This is just really a letdown. That is a very high possibility for me. So I don't know what I'll do. But yeah, I'm really reluctant kind of about trying another William Goldman book because I just like that I'm 2 for 2, you know, both great books. So I really don't want to read a book by William Goldman where I'm like, yeah, this one's not very good. I don't like this one at all. I'd really like to like William Goldman, but I'm just not sure if I will. Just like the other books I have by him, like Boys and Girls Together is one of the books, and I don't even know what the other books I have by him are. They just don't look very interesting. And part of the thing with Magic is that I already had a connection with that because I'd seen the film Magic and it terrified me so much. So I wanted to try it today, you know, and see what I thought of it. But with the other William Goldman books, I just don't have any expectations going in. So I don't have any kind of emotional connection or whatever. So I'm really worried my next William Goldman book may not be as good as these two. But yeah, Magic by William Goldman, I definitely recommend it. I liked it a lot. I wouldn't say it's like a masterpiece book, but I enjoyed it. And I would also recommend watching the movie and see if you agree with me that, you know, the movie is unintentionally funny. And I was just laughing throughout that movie. So yeah, enjoyable book, enjoyable movie. And that brings us to my favorite book of the year from the 25 to read in 2025 list. If you have been following my list, you would already know what the book is, or if you just look at the table of contents or whatever of this video, you'll know what it is. So my favorite read for the year of the 25 to read in 2025 list is Going Solo by Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl is most famous as the author of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I've also read Matilda by him. I liked both of those books as well. I also read his first book in his memoirs, which is called Boy. Going Solo is part 2 of his autobiography memoirs. Boy is about his childhood growing up. And Going Solo is about his experiences in the Second World War. So first off, for Boy, I originally did not plan on reading that, but I wanted to read Going Solo because I knew at that point that Roald Dahl was a fighter pilot in the Second World War, and he shot down German planes in World War II, which I think is pretty awesome. People may only kind of know him as the author of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and today a lot of the main controversy for Roald Dahl is that he had fat shaming in his books. So a lot of people today are censoring Roald Dahl books because of fat shaming or just vile female characters or whatever. So there's a real big anti-Roald Dahl push kind of in the world just because of his treatment or whatever toward like fat characters and female characters, kind of. And to me, it's just like the dude freaking flew airplanes in World War II against the Germans. Like, this guy shot down German planes. And it's funny to me because a lot of these people, like, you know, they want to be like the, you know, they hate Nazis, you know, these groups, you know, they always call like people who disagree with them fascists. But Roald Dahl actually fought against the Germans in World War II. He shot down Germans. He shot down fascists. And so what are these people doing today? They're like, oh, he has fat shaming in his books. We need to censor his books. And it's like, dude, Roald Dahl flew airplanes in World War II. Roald Dahl is basically a hero. You know, what have you guys done? All you guys do is censor books. Roald Dahl actually freaking killed Nazis. So Roald Dahl was a good guy. You guys are nothing. Anyway, so originally I was going to read Going Solo, but then for the book, like it says on the front cover of it, like whatever, it says like the continuing story of Boy or whatever, continuing the story as begun in Boy. And so at that point, I realized Going Solo was part 2 of his autobiography. So I was like, well, I guess I'll read Solo, and Boy, because we had copies of it at the bookstore. So I read it and I liked it pretty well. And the main thing about Boy for me is that it's written very much in the same style as Roald Dahl's children's books, like Matilda and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's like the exact same kind of writing style, and he also has illustrations in it. So yeah, it's basically written like an autobiography for children readers or whatever, child readers. And that was all really enjoyable. And also with that book, Boy, you kind of got to see like the inspiration he had for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Like, you know, a candy store he used to go to as a kid and stuff. And like teachers he had who, you know, he wrote into his books later. So you could kind of see like those vile female characters, who they were based on and why he wrote them, you know, and what those women did to him when he was a boy. And so I really liked it. That was a real enjoyable read for me. And it was just so peculiar reading a book like a memoirs written for children audiences or whatever, because that's probably who most of his audience was, because he was mainly a children's author with like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So that was really unique and really enjoyable. Now, I thought Going Solo would have the same thing, and I think it did have some illustrations maybe, but not really so much, especially not so much cartoony cartoons or cartoony illustrations, I meant to say. More it had photographs. And so anyway, my impression of Boy is that, you know, it's written for children, you know, but Going Solo, I do not think is written so much for children. It is more, I don't want to say adult content necessarily, but I don't really think this book was really targeted for children. It's written kind of sort of like that same style, like the same kind of vocabulary and stuff, but yeah, I'm just not sure if this book would be suitable or appropriate for children. Like, for instance, he talks about how there's a confrontation with the Germans and like this guy is shot in the head, and he talks about how, you know, gray stuff comes out. So, you know, his brains are coming out, you know, he has that in the book. And there's a scene where there's like this venomous snake that gets into this house, and the snake like winds up killing the dog, you know, so the dog dies. And you basically see that happen, you know, in the book. You hear about the dog dying. So then again, it's like talking about his experiences in the war and like, you know, having aerial combat against the Germans and shooting down German planes and stuff. So there's really no content in the book that I think would be like really suitable for children, even though it's written kind of in the same kind of vocabulary. And the books like look very similar to each other. But yeah, I would like be perfectly okay recommending like a Boy to children readers or whatever. But for Going Solo, I would probably like hold off until they're more like teenagers. I don't know. I mean, everyone would be different, and that's for every like parent to judge what they think their kid is like appropriate for them. You know, that's not my place to say. But personally, like for myself, I would absolutely recommend like Matilda and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory for like, anything, 5, 6, 7 year olds, whatever. Boy, that's also like, 8, 9, 10 year olds, they could read that fine. For going solo, I think it's probably more like, 12, 13 or so. Not that it goes overboard with it, but just that it has it. It has scenes about talking about like, gray matter coming out and stuff. But anyway, reading the book, it was just, again, very enjoyable to read, just like with Boy. So really every Roald Dahl book I've tried so far, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, Boy, Going Solo, they're all just really well written. So I really like Roald Dahl as a writer and a storyteller and just his vocabulary. It's just enjoyable to read, even for me, not like a child reader or anything. It's books that adults could enjoy just the same, I think. And yeah, I think Roald Dahl definitely does need credit for what he did. I mean, he flew airplanes in World War II against the Germans. And that doesn't mean like he was flying them like far away from the front lines or whatever while the war was going on. He was actually like in dogfights and stuff with the Germans. And like when they were having this battle, like invading Greece, there was like 400 German planes or something, and like 10 British planes or something like that. They were so vastly outnumbered and everything. And yeah, so he's talking about these battles where it's like, 30 German planes against like 5 of them, and just crazy. And so it's really just a miracle that he lived. And yeah, so yeah, basically, I really enjoyed reading it, and I really would recommend it so people would understand and appreciate what Roald Dahl did, flying airplanes in World War II against the Germans. That to me is the coolest, greatest thing he did. His greatest accomplishment was not writing Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It was flying airplanes in World War II against the Germans, shooting down Germans. I mean, like, thank you, Roald Dahl. And then today, the only controversy is, oh, he had fat shaming in his books. It's like, go to hell, all these people. So yeah, I really liked it, really enjoyed reading it, and pretty much every Roald Dahl book at this point is a to-read book for me. I really like him. I really like his writing. I really like him as a person. And yeah, so really enjoyable to read. So that was my favorite book of the year, was Going Solo by Roald Dahl. Just quite a flawless, perfect book. But again, I will say a little bit more a book for adults than for kids. Anyway, that is it for this video. I know I'm posting it a little bit early because it's only early October, and really I could have done this review or whatever, this video like 3 months ago. The only book I haven't had finished yet that was terrible grammar, was Why Not Victory by Barry Goldwater. I really sat on that book for several months, just really slowly read it. I've been reading other stuff and doing other stuff, like working on editing, working on my writing and stuff. So that has been on my back burner for a long time, Why Not Victory by Barry Goldwater. And then I read that like a couple months ago or something like that. And again, I've just been kind of sitting on this video. So really, if I would have like kept to it more, I really could have done this video like in June or July. But anyway, finally getting around to it. So yeah, that was my ranking of my 25 books to read in 2025. I'm pretty eager to try 26 to read in 2026. And, since I've already read all the other books, it's like I'm saving some books where it's like, I'd like to keep that book for 26 to read in 2026. I don't want to read that book yet. That'd be an interesting book to read. So I'm trying to pick books off my shelf where it's like, yeah, I don't want to save that for 26 to read in 2026. Anyway, so yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you in another video. Bye.
2, 3, 4.